Healthcare in this country should be a right, not a privilege. And we need to work together with President Obama on comprehensive healthcare reform. One idea that I liked a lot that came up in the presidential debates was opening up Medicare for everyone. Having a not-for-profit system that can compete with the current system is a way that lowers costs for everyone. I think if you had something like a Medicare that folks could buy into at, let's say, 4 or 5% of their income, you're always going to have an affordable system that people can have access to. So, for example, a small business, an individual, a family could buy into this healthcare system and have something like a Medicare available to them that has good basic coverage on all the things most families need. I think it's a very simple system. It's a very clean system. You'd have to fix Medicare a bit before you piled on a lot of new people into the system, making sure that reimbursement rates were better for our hospitals, for our senior centers, for our providers, because a lot of the reimbursement rates are too low. But once you do that, then I think there's an enormous opportunity to provide that not-for-profit system that people can buy into at a price that they can afford. I think that many people have mischaracterized my record and are very political in their answers. For me, I represented a district in upstate New York that had a very specific focus. We were focused on job creation, middle-class tax cuts, and making sure that we had health care reform so that all children had access to affordable health care. Now that I represent the whole state, the many issues I'll be focusing on are far broader and far more diverse. And I think I will represent the state as well as I represented my district. And I'll just keep traveling the state and listening to each and every constituency and build a legislative agenda that reflects the priorities of everyone. Well, I've spent a lot of time over the last few months traveling all around New York, from Buffalo to the Bronx to Brooklyn. And one concern that so many families have is, how do we reduce gun violence? I've met with parents who have lost their children to gun violence. I've met with students who have lost classmates. And what is clear is that we have a problem with illegal guns coming into our community. When I've talked to some police officers, and I've talked to Ray Kelly, our police commissioner of New York City, they've told me that 85% of the guns that are in New York State come from other states, and about 90% of them are illegal. So one of the first things I'm going to work on is a very tough anti-trafficking piece of legislation to make sure these illegal guns are not finding their way into the streets of New York and in a place where they can harm our children. So I'm going to work on that bill. There's also a necessity to make sure law enforcement has access to all the tools and information they need. So there's a measure in Congress that we're going to fix a law. It's called the T-Hart Amendment, to make sure that they have access to all the trace data that they need to follow through and figure out where these weapons are coming from. And third, we really need to close the gun show loophole in other states, because so many states right now have very lax gun laws, unlike New York State, which has much stronger laws. So in order to fight crime and in order to keep guns out of the hands of criminals, we really have to make sure that these guns don't find their way into New York. Immigration is part of the history of this country. Our country was built on immigrants. Part of the richness and greatness of our country is because of immigrants. And so what we need now is a comprehensive immigration reform policy that I know President Obama is working on, and I hope to work with him to make sure we have a policy that reflects the contributions that immigrants make and reflect who we are as a nation. Our immigration policy has two basic pillars. The first is family reunification. I think it's essential that we have that policy work much more effectively than it works today. The last Senate bill that was discussed over a year ago had a policy in place that said an 8-year backlog was okay. I don't think it's okay. I think we need to hire the right number of lawyers and case managers and create the kind of structure that we can have that backlog reduced in within 60 days. We also need to focus on how we create an immigration plan that works for everyone. And I think that's something very important for the long-term economic strength of this nation. And so we need to right-size immigration. We need to make sure that we have the right number of visas for the right number of jobs throughout this country, because there's many, many industries that really rely on immigrant labor. For example, the agricultural industry. I serve on the Agriculture Committee in the Senate. I serve there in the House. And I know that's an area where we must find solutions. And there's many other industries that are the same. So I think together we can work hard on comprehensive immigration reform and to make sure we have a policy that works for everyone.